thank you very much for joining us for Ultron Technology Day today. I trust that those sessions were not only invigorating, exciting, inspiring, and informative, but also I'd like to just thank all the people involved, courtesy of Brainstorm, Leslie Stones, James Francis, and Adam Oxford. I hope you enjoyed those sessions. I'm very pleased to welcome now a man who is probably well known to everybody, but it's always a pleasure to spend time with him. I think it was earlier this year or late last year, Mteto?
It was early this year.
Mteto Nyati is the chief executive of Ultron, and he's the man who had to preside over a year, which all of us have been a part of, a year of huge turmoil, huge change, huge variety and difference and opportunity in some ways, frightening stuff in other ways. So how have you fared, Mteto? Do you think you've aged, or do you think that you've stayed the same?
Look, none of us have been prepared for an environment like this. Whether we're talking in business or in government, all leaders, it's the first time that we're experiencing something like this. It's West in South Africa is both the economic crisis and also this pandemic. Right. It's a combination of those two things. It's been very tough, but I think what was required during this time was were leaders who are open to accepting that they don't know everything, and then going out, engaging with the staff and bringing everybody on board to try and figure out what's the best way of doing things. And that's the approach that we have taken within Ultron.
Well, it's interesting you say, leaders admitting that they don't know anything, because really at the beginning of this pandemic, no one knew anything.
Yes.
And there've obviously been mistakes made, but that was inevitable.
Yes.
And the people who've made the least mistakes were the ones who either asked the most questions or admitted that they didn't know anything. And I suppose that's difficult for some people to deal with. People want decisive action from someone who knows everything, especially in a position like yours.
Yes.
And if you're a politician or you're a leader in business or you're someone in society that people look to for leadership, sometimes these calls are very much more difficult to make than people assume.
Yes.
And you don't necessarily have magic powers.
We don't. None of us have the magic powers, and it's so important that one needs to engage with the stakeholders. Within Ultron, we engaged with a number of stakeholders, but sometimes people can be trapped into that process of being engaged and be stuck there.
Yeah, we've seen that in government.
You need to engage with the view of coming up with something to go execute, not just to be engaged and be forever consulting. So we have engaged with our staff, and some of our staff have come up with great ideas in terms of how to address things. My leadership team has been very instrumental in executing and helping us to come up with some ideas, and it's been a great engagement. Also with our customers.
So I spoke to Andrew Holden earlier this morning, and I think he gave us a very good idea of how Ultron's dealt with a year of such change and turmoil.
Yes.
But it's interesting that he mentioned how you guys came up with a strategy for the employees and for the customers, which seems to have been very successful on both fronts. You obviously have many other people to consider too. You work in an environment where we do have shareholders, we have government, we have plenty of people who are interested, potential customers who haven't engaged yet, who may be working with you now. All of those things have to factor into these decisions.
You have to. But for us, the beauty was that we didn't have to go far when we're looking for some of the answers to these things. We have a set of values. When you've got values, it's something that is so powerful. It helps you to deal with uncertain environments like this one. For example,
tell me about these values.
One of our values is openness, honesty, and integrity. So in dealing with something like this, we could not just sit in our little offices as the leaders and come up with solutions. We had to be transparent. We had to share as much as possible with our staff. Also get from them some inputs. We had to collaborate. That's another value that we have, collaboration. Another value is about looking at making sure that our stakeholders, not just one set of stakeholders being shareholders, we look across all stakeholders, employees, customers, communities. What is the impact of this thing? So for example, when we took the decision to take some cuts, we started with ourselves as leaders and say, hey, there's not going to be bonuses. We'll cut our bonuses. Bonuses that we have earned in the last year. We decided to cut them by 50%. So when you go to employees and asking them to take some sacrifices, you started with yourself, you know. And when we're engaging now with the investors, we're going to be declaring a dividend. We have to say, we can't declare the full dividend. You have to come to the party as well. So we cut their dividend. So that's the approach. But all of that is informed by our set of values. We're going back to the fairness. Are we being fair to all stakeholders?
So, Mteto, you mentioned leadership at the beginning of this conversation, and largely I would imagine some of the reasons that people would want to hear from you is because leadership has become this this holy grail, and people think that there is magic involved in it. We also are constantly told, well, we've got to keep finding good leaders, and it's a difficult thing to discuss because leadership takes on different forms. During this situation, as you've observed it from your point of view all over the world, there have been some people who've really stepped up during this time of crisis. And I always think that leaders are tested when things are hard, not when things are easy. Anyone can be a leader when things are easy. So who do you think has got it right in the world, in South Africa, even in your own company?
When I look at, let's start the whole world. The leaders of countries. I must say that it's been a disappointment to see some of the leading countries, like the US, like the UK, not doing very well when it comes to this.
And prevaricating and changing course in the middle of something like, no decisiveness.
These are countries that has got huge resources, but they could not use those resources because they did not have a plan. You can have resources, but if you don't have a strategy or a vision, it's going to be difficult to apply those resources effectively. So there are countries like that, but there are countries like New Zealand, for example, like Germany, for example, done extremely well. What is also interesting is that who are the leaders of these countries?
Women.
Women have done exceptionally well.
Well, I mean, Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand, there are only about 10 people in all of New Zealand.
But it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter. Honestly, it doesn't matter. What is key is that the approach to crisis. Men typically would think that we've got this, we've got the answers, right? But women, generally, they reach out to people, but they are decisive, but they reach out and gather some ideas and they go and execute. So that's at a global level. I would mention those two.
And here in South Africa?
In South Africa, I would say in South Africa, initially, our president got it right.
And everybody bought in.
Very decisive.
Everyone was on board.
Executing. He brought the whole country, the vision, clear vision, But I think as time went by, he didn't stay engaged in the process. He allowed his ministers to run with the thing. The problem with that is sometimes those people have got their own agendas and you end up far away from where you wanted to be. So you end up with regulations that do not make sense. For example, if you are a taxi driver, you know that there is a minimum number of people that you need to be carrying in your taxi in order for you to be profitable. Otherwise, it just does not make sense to take that trip.
Now, taxi is not an NGO.
Then you are told that you need to have 50%. Immediately, it just does not make sense. Why do you even take that trip? So the lack of business understanding was reflected in the regulations that came up. You know, I'm just using the transport
Absolutely.
as just
But
being
it's a-
one
but
of
it's a
those
good example,
examples.
yeah.
You know, so that's the thing. Here, I think we took some key decisions as Ultron upfront. We took some of the sacrifices that I've just made.
Yes.
But as we were going through, because we did not know that how long this thing is going to be, we then suddenly realized that, hey, we should have taken even much more tough action.
Has it given you an opportunity to streamline certain parts of the business, to cut costs that many of us thought were inevitable business costs that actually aren't?
Look, you know, as we engage with our investor community, and they would always be asking me, you know, what about that business? Do you still think that that business is relevant to Ultron? We all knew that, you know, they are right. The investors are right, that honestly that business is no longer relevant to where we are going, but we kind of kept it, you know. But right now, through this COVID-19, those problems just came through, just like that. And we had to make those calls. Make a call that these particular businesses are not core, so let's get out of those businesses. This business, we've got so much fat in them, let's take out the fat. You know, so you use the crisis to go and execute some of the things that you know deep down that you should have been doing, but you go do it. So that when you emerge out of the crisis, you emerge leaner, but stronger.
Absolutely. We're talking to Mteto Nyati, if you have just come in now, and I'd like to encourage you to also ask your questions on the app. If you are on the app at the moment, you can send us your questions. I will put them directly to Mteto Nyati, and you can have them answered right here live. So please participate by going onto the app and sending us your questions if you have any. So what sacrifices can the other stakeholders make? What sacrifices you've already spoken of in the leadership team and in the employees side of things, but what are you expecting from shareholders, from customers, and other people involved in your day-to-day business where it comes to overcoming this crisis and getting things back on track?
So you look at the whole set of stakeholders, like suppliers. You know, looking at the suppliers, our own suppliers, we had to go and negotiate with them, renegotiate some of the terms, you know, because we are going through crisis. We want to preserve cash, you know.
Yes.
So maybe we pay you a little, take a little longer to pay you, you know. At least you will remain your customer, but maybe we take longer, or you kind of like reduce your prices to us. You know?
Right.
Those are some of the things that you build. You use this opportunity to strengthen your relationships with your suppliers, but through engagement. Your customers will be coming to us and asking the same thing that we're asking our suppliers. Can we pay you that much longer? You have to assess and come to the conclusion. We came to the conclusion, some of our customers said, yes, we will extend the terms for you. You know, you are sacrificing there, but your view, you're thinking long-term for your customer. The same thing with our board members.
Yes.
They had to sacrifice their fees. They had to come to the party as well. 3 months of their fees, they had to sacrifice those. Our own employees, we sacrificed the executive bonuses, but for the rest of the employees, they did not have to sacrifice their bonuses. But we had to roll back the salary increases that we had just done in March. You know?
You tweeted something this year that got a lot of attention. And I mean, look, everything this year has got a lot of attention because everything is suddenly controversial. But I couldn't help reading that you said this in August. The ANC's gone past its sell-by date. It is no longer relevant to the economic and social challenges of our times. I'm always impressed and pleased when I see business leaders who are courageous, because most business leaders in this country are ready to toe the line in any direction. But this got you an enormous amount of reaction. Can you explain it to those of us who maybe don't understand why this caused such uproar?
Look, the ANC is the governing party, and it has been ruling this country for the last 26 years now. And some people, even in the ANC, say that they are going to be governing this country up until Jesus comes back. There's some thinking like that. So when you are coming now with a statement which says that the organization is irrelevant, it clearly you
makes people upset.
Yeah, they will be upset. But certainly, where are you coming from? You are coming from assessing the actions, because at the end of the day, you judge people not by what they are saying, you judge them by their actions.
Yeah.
What actions have we been taking to try and address the huge problem around corruption?
Absolutely none.
What actions have we been taking to address the issue of education in our country? A country that has got a failing education system does not have a future.
And in a business like yours,
Yeah.
I mean, you're always looking for talent.
Yes.
We need people with STEM degrees,
Yes.
science, maths, technology, engineering.
And the numbers are falling.
Yeah.
Instead of going up, look at China.
Right.
Look at India.
Yeah.
They are tripling, quadrupling their investment in those areas, whereas in our country, the numbers are coming down. What it means is that in terms of the future, those countries will always be ahead of us. So that's what I'm talking about, where we're looking at, does this organization serve the interest of the citizens of the country? That's where I was coming from. And saying,
But surely there shouldn't be any reason for uproar around that. First of all, people are always crying out for someone to speak out when they feel that there are things that could be done that are not being done.
Mm-hmm.
And largely, I do think business lacks courage because business wants to keep things friendly with all the stakeholders. And they're not prepared to make the appropriate risks where something is worth standing up for.
Yeah. I think sometimes as business we're short-sighted in the sense that we're just looking at our immediate environment, right? We said, okay, we'll just look at this thing. But if this country fails, what does it mean to your business?
Yeah.
So you cannot say that you are not going to be involved or try to shape and try to guide what's happening at a country level, because ultimately, if that does not work, you are not going to have a business. So that's why some of us are always engaged, trying to find ways to support and guide and partner with government to try and address these challenges.
In the end, everyone's goal is the same. We want prosperity.
Exactly.
We want to end poverty. We want people to have opportunities.
Yes.
That's on everyone's agenda.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be an us and them
It's
situation.
not an us and them. Yes, I know people do not like to be criticized, but one person once said that our country lacks enough people who love us enough to tell us the truth.
Yeah.
We need people who can tell us the truth so that we can address the challenges.
Well, if you have a question for Mteto on leadership in a time of crisis, we would love to hear from you. Please send us your questions. They're available to you on the app, and you can go in there and add any question you would like. We would love to hear from you. So Mteto Nyati is my guest today. He's actually our host collectively for today's Ultron Technology Day. What did you want to achieve through today? Many businesses have put off events like this. They've decided to scrap them altogether. You found a way of doing this with technology, which is entirely appropriate since this is your area of expertise. But why was it important to do this Technology Day today?
We need to somehow go back to some kind of normality. Our lives need to go back to something. We cannot keep ourselves in our homes and not be engaged. Of course, we need to adapt to the changes that are expected because of the environment that we are in. Hence, we are now leveraging technology to deliver this thing. But our customers are struggling right now with, some of them have not necessarily embraced technology, but because of COVID-19, they have been forced to go in that direction. We need to find a way of guiding them and partnering them, sharing with them what is out there, sharing best practices with them, so that they don't have to learn things the hard way. So that was the purpose of today: sharing what is available there, sharing what we are doing within Ultron to leverage technology, but also just to communicate out there to all of our customers to South Africa that, hey, we need to get back, need to get this economy back. Otherwise, we're not going to have a country.
That's exactly right. So your questions, if you'd like to send them to us, you can do so on the app. Mteto's got lots to talk to us about still, but if you have any areas of particular interest, you're more than welcome to let us know about these things. What is it about technology that excites you about all of this going forward? Because, as again, I said to Andrew this morning, we were on a nice trajectory as humanity.
Yes.
We were heading towards a place where we kept dropping the levels of poverty, we kept making sure that there were more opportunities for more people in the world. In Africa, there are unlimited opportunities because there are many problems to be solved. And many of those problems can be solved by technology. People are very optimistic about this. They were before COVID, and I think they still are after.
Yes.
So a company like Ultron has incredible insights into what those gaps are and where they could be filled. And for many of your customers and suppliers, they're busy doing the hard work of filling those gaps. But what is it that makes you optimistic and excited about the future?
You know, technology is the biggest leveler. You know, it levels the playing fields. Let's look at this now. Let's take UCT or any university.
Sure.
The number of people that it can take in any one year is limited.
Physically.
Right? Physically.
Only so much space.
Yeah. Through COVID-19, we have been forced to go online. Have been forced to adopt the digital channel. Think about this now. Why should we be going back to only physical, when in reality, that same university can touch thousands more people that in the past they could not serve? You know, that's what I'm talking about. There are some people that may not have the resources to be able to be accommodated in some of the hostels and things like that, but they can be able to work and take their studies from home. You know?
Absolutely.
That's a huge amount of saving that you are including people that previously have not been included. Think about healthcare. You know, the ability now to use telemedicine. We've got limited number of doctors and health practitioners in this country. But if we are using technology, we can take the limited resources that we have and make those resources available to millions of people out there. That is what we would like to see our government doing, of course, in partnership with companies like us. Think about financial inclusion. Many people, even today, are still not included, which means that they cannot participate effectively in terms of our economy.
Absolutely.
You know, if we bring things like mobile services and having finance and being able to do all sorts of things via mobile platforms, we are including thousands of people or millions of people that in the past could not be included. You know, the stokvels, billions of rands are sitting in those stokvels. Think if you could find platforms that could leverage and help those people to do even better things with the platforms that they have. You know, so that's what excites me about technology. What excites me is the fact that it democratizes many things. It makes things accessible, things that previously were not accessible.
So we have a few questions that are coming in. The first one, do you think that the rate of digital transformation, something that again came up this morning, is happening fast enough now that we're in COVID? Has accelerated it, obviously, to a certain degree, but do you think it's happening fast enough?
You know what? We need to ask ourselves the question, because we've been on this digital transformation journey and been hammering this message for almost 6, 7, 10 years now. But the adoption has not necessarily been that fast.
Yeah, why do you think that is? Yeah.
Why? It's because of people like me, leaders. We, the leaders, you know, the people down there in the organization, they've been coming up with projects to us. But because we cannot connect with the technology and unfortunately we're the decision makers, we put those projects on the side. Now, through COVID-19, you are sitting at home, you are the leader, you are forced to use that Zoom. You are forced to use that Microsoft Teams. Then you realize that this is what my staff has been telling me all along. I'm able to do all of these things from my home. So they've been forced to embrace technology. The good thing is that the right people now can understand the power of technology. Think about, I was just thinking the other day that I usually, once a quarter, I go to the UK. We've got an operation there. I sit there, I chair the board there. And it usually takes me out of South Africa like a week.
Right.
To go and do that
travel
whole board
time.
travel and all sorts of things. But now I was able to do that board meeting from home, boom, like that. I'm asking myself, why would I do the same thing? I could go back to the way I used to do things in the past. No ways. I will. So people, the key decision makers, have now seen the benefits of technology. As a result of that, it's going to accelerate. There's going to be so much pressure going on the chief information officers of the companies because now the demands are going to be coming from the board.
Yeah, well, that's terrific, and I think it's such a valid point. So there's another question here, this one. What are you doing at Ultron to assist employees with remote working and managing the work-life balance? Obviously, everyone was thrown into turmoil in the beginning, but since then, there are people who perhaps didn't have facilities at home to be able to do their work from home. Have you helped them with necessary resources and infrastructure?
Yeah.
Have you had any stumbling blocks along the way that the rest of us can learn from?
Yes. So if you go back to maybe 4 years ago, we had an Ultron that was composed of maybe 10 different operations. And in each and every one of those operations, they had different systems. So systems did not talk to one another. So we embarked 4 years ago on a strategy to standardize, on a CRM, on enterprise resource planning systems, on human capital systems, to standardize. But hit with COVID-19, we were able to switch just like that, no problems.
Sure.
No problems.
Timing is everything.
No problem at all. Because of our teams, we created an organization called Shared Services that have been driving this project. And they have done a great job to prepare us. But what we did not know, what we were forced to do because of COVID-19, some of our employees did not have, for example, laptops and things like that. So if you now are working from home, you need to make sure that you've got the necessary resoursources.
Yes.
Give them the tools to do their job. Some of them did not have Wi-Fi at home. You assume that not everybody has got a Wi-Fi at home. So we had to go and negotiate with the mobile operators to give us some bulk discount so that we can offer our employees data. All of that, we had to train some of them on the use of some of the tools that we had. So all of that we did in the first month of COVID-19. By the way, we went on we asked our employees to go work remotely 2 weeks before the lockdown. So that 2 weeks also gave us the opportunity to address some of these problems, that I've just shared with you. So when the lockdown was announced by the president, we were already ready. Because
you preempted it in a way.
Yes, we said, let us use this time. Go out there. We prefer you to work from home. Before it was asked of us, go work from home. And that 2 weeks was critical in helping us to address some of these challenges.
Your questions on the app to Mteto Nyati, if you want to send any of them. Has the way Ultron engages with customers changed, and how?
Yeah, it has changed. It's remained the same and also changed. For example, this kind of setup that
Sure.
we're doing today, this would ordinarily be at Gallagher Estate, where we will be having
auditorium.
and presenting to people, and we have to change. But we have been having webinars now. Different operations of Ultron have been engaging with their customers differently, of course, online, and that has changed. And I think some of those practices are going to remain, because it's actually an efficient way of doing things. We have been getting even more appointments with some of you with the customers now, because it's easy to get the appointments with the customers. The meetings themselves, what is interesting, the meetings usually you set it up for an hour. If it is a face-to-face meeting, somehow people will find something to fill that whole hour.
And tea and biscuits.
Yes. But we found that things have actually become even very efficient. So if the meeting can finish, a 1-hour meeting finishes in 20 minutes, boom, finishes.
Fantastic. Because who wants to sit for an hour if you finish talking about things?
Yeah. So some of those practices, we will continue to use these new ways of working.
Have you had customers who've preferred a face-to-face and made accommodations for them?
Yes, we have had customers that in fact, when you are, more especially some of the large, complex projects that we do, but there, what we always do is make sure that we comply with the regulations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Mteto, here's a really good question. What are the challenging decisions that leaders of businesses are grappling with at the moment? And when you talk to other CEOs and you speak to certain business leaders in this country in particular, what are the things that they're most concerned about? What are they still dealing with that they haven't found the answers to?
I think the big issue that most of the business leaders are facing is the economic thing. When you're looking at the data, looking at unemployment, looking at GDP growth, all of these indicators are showing negative. It's like negative. And you are asking yourself, should I be investing or not?
Yeah.
When is the right time to invest? Will I be investing too early?
Yeah.
So those are some of the decisions that people are making. The other big decision that the CEOs are making, in fact, the leadership teams are making, is which businesses should we sell? Should we be in all of the things that we are doing, or should we be doing less? If we're doing less, what does it mean for the businesses that we're disposing of? And what will be the impact to employees? Many people, if you go and talk to the labor unions, you'll think that people like myself, CEOs, are heartless people, people who do not think about the employees. But that's the first thing that comes to mind. All decisions are largely based on what will the impact be on our employees. So these decisions are not easy to make. You need to make, but.
But what about on that note? And you bring up the unions. I see so many stories in the news in South Africa of unions that are trying to prevent what is inevitable. Technology is going to bring massive change. And I'm sure you've thought about this like many of us have. If you're in a job which looks like it might be in some way replaced or at least changed by technology, the unions are not paying adequate attention to that. They are thinking very short term about, we must save jobs. But in effect, they're not helping those people to become useful in an economy which will be different and is inevitable. These are things that we have to consider in a much longer term. And I don't know that there are enough people, certainly in the unions, but even in some business and probably in the government as well. They need to start applying their mind to these things. Otherwise, they're going to be a huge number of people left behind. And we can't afford that.
I remember when I used to work for a company called NAMPEC many years ago. And our union at the time there was NUMSA. NUMSA. And we had decided as a company there to be proactive and engage with our union. and share with them some of these changes we are talking about, saying, no, know what, we need to, yes, we'll shift people, maybe we'll cut the people, but we'll employ people more in these areas. Let us have a plan to reskill people, to prepare them for this future that we are seeing ahead of us. So just looking at that and how that worked, I think we need to start to do something like that, where we are working with them and sharing, because sometimes the union are saying no because they do not know any better. If we can share more and more, and also demonstrate that the actions that we are taking are maybe reducing, but I'm shifting the business to focus in growth areas. As a result of these growth areas, I'll end up having to employ more people. If you just look at Ultron, one of the first things that I did when I came to the company was to reduce and cut, But now we have more employees in Ultron than at that time we have grown. The same kind of thinking that it paralyzes some of us when it comes to the SAAs of this world.
Yeah.
You cannot touch people.
Yeah.
You have to, otherwise the whole organization is going to go down.
Then everyone loses their
so
job.
my view is that we need to, at a sector level, engage with the unions, help them to understand some of these things. And some of the union members, many of them are reasonable people. And they understand their interest. Their interest is their members. But what is interesting is that their members are actually our employees. So we've got a shared interest there.
Absolutely.
Look at those commonalities. Let's drive agendas based on the common interests.
More questions for Mteto. What are some of the values that you yourself hold, or beliefs that you have as a leader? And they would have helped you during this time. You spoke about values earlier.
Yeah. So I would say many of us are going around in this world without having taken the time to just pause and ask ourselves, what values drive me? And are these values relevant for where I want to be? We need to take stock of our values. And some of these values, we get them from, of course, the environment where we grew up, from family, from friends. And you grow up, you have to ask yourself, because the values actually guide you. They are the things that make you make decisions. Absolutely. You don't know this, but if you do not surface those values, you will end up not understanding the decisions that you are making, only to find that it's driven by things that you could have changed.
Yeah.
So I'm saying we need to take stock of what those values are, and change the ones that you feel are not necessarily the right ones. You ask, what are my values? My values, I've just got 4 values. The first one is excellence. That's very, very important for me. The second one is integrity, second value. The third one is fairness.
Yeah.
And the fourth value is family. So you're asking, how has these values helped during this time of crisis? Fairness. It was critical for me to make sure that there is not just one stakeholder that is taking the pain. We should all make sure that all stakeholders take their fair share of pain. But that's driven by my belief in that fairness.
I don't think anyone's going to argue with the value there. How was lockdown for you, though? I mean, were you at home with the family? How much of your own personal life was impacted by this, and how afraid were you in the beginning? Because I think all of us were pretty worried. We were pessimistic, and we didn't know because there was so little information. Yeah. So I think we all got a bit paranoid in the beginning. That's eased somewhat. How was it for you? How was it for your immediate family?
Yeah, for my family, I think just before the lockdown in South Africa, we have our daughter who is studying abroad. And we had to make a decision whether she should come back home or not, And that was very, very stressful, that decision, because she was in the middle of the term where she was, and to bring her back home, the impact that may have in terms of her studies. But we made the call that she must come home.
Right.
She came back home, and she was able to complete her studies from home. What was great is that we now had the entire family, all together,
Yeah.
which was great for us. So that was good for me. It was also from the connection point, just being connected with your family, it being there. Yes, we work, you try to make time for family, but in this case,
Yeah.
you were there all the time with the family, and that is what I enjoyed the most, just connecting with the family. But looking again personally, but looking at how this environment affected some of our leaders. Some of our leaders just did not, this whole lockdown thing was not so good for them.
They went to ground. You didn't hear from them for months.
No, they just want to be with people. That's just who they are.
You're talking about the ones who were much more socially affected.
Yes, and like it's like they're going crazy. We're trying to we have to find ways to support them.
Yes, and of course those people who were terribly lonely.
Yeah.
And many of our old people in this country who were most at risk and who were isolated.
Yes.
And you can imagine the rates of depression and mental health problems that would have erupted in certain parts of the country and in certain demographics. We need to consider those people.
We need to. By the way, one of the insights that I picked up throughout this period is that the normal way of working is actually designed and supports extroverts.
Yes.
Right? Now, lockdown, the opposite happens. They thrive, the introverts. They are so happy with this environment. But the problem is that, the extroverts are struggling in that environment. So going forward, we need environments that cater for both. Because the participation of introverts in these Teams meetings or Zoom meetings these are people who usually say nothing in meetings, but now they were sending messages and doing all sorts of things. Wow, so-and-so, what happened? Is he drinking? What is happening?
Look, some people might have been. Yeah. We don't know. I love that. That's such a good point. So your book, which has done very, very well, I've seen it's been on the bestseller lists almost the entire year, still there in the top 10 books in South Africa. Well done on that.
Thank you.
Betting on a Darkie is what it's called. Can we expect a sequel?
That's a good question. But I just believe that this book needs to be given the time for it to learn.
Sure.
And learn properly and get as many people talking about it as possible. So to come up with anything now, I think it would mess up that thought. So I would like it to continue and like people to be engaged with it. It does not always have the line of thinking that is normal, but that's what we need. We need people who are questioning things, and that's what
the last thing we want is more normal.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all been looking to the people who weren't thinking normal to give us guidance during this time. The overall strategy for Ultron, to go back to business for a second.
Yeah.
The overall strategy there, has it been displaced? Have you had to recalibrate? Andrew was saying this morning that for many of your customers, the solutions that we're looking for now are much more immediate and for survival for many businesses. Those long-term strategies, the 5-year plan, the 10-year plan, a lot of those have been put on hold. Is that true for you?
Not really for us. 4 years ago, we set out a 5-year strategy. And at the end of the 3rd year, which was in March this year, we were a year ahead of that plan.
Wow.
Which is really a good thing. In South Africa, we are always known as a country where we've got great plans, great policies, but we can't execute. We don't implement. It's good to see that it's possible. If people can follow things through, can execute. It's boring to go and hold people accountable, hold meeting, ask, where are we on this thing? That is not cool. right? But that is what is required in order to move things forward. You need to have those conversations. And that's what is lacking sometimes. We like to be sitting up there at a strategy level and talking all sorts of things around vision without driving execution. We have focused on both here. So our 5-year strategy remains the same, but we have tweaked it now. We've decided, for example, to unlock value by delisting our operation in the UK. So that operation is going to be delisted, it's going to be separate from Ultron. Because of that, we had to then look at what's remaining behind. What is going to be our 5-year strategy going forward? So that is what we have done. We have looked at the vision, the next 5-year vision, or look at our values again, and we've decided to take out one of the values. One of the values that was there was leading returns for shareholders. And as we were rolling out these values over the last 3 years, rolling them out, our employees kept saying, who brought this value? We never brought this thing in.
Sure.
What is this thing?
Smuggled in.
And they are right. Because we came up as employees and us, we came up with a set of 5 values. But when I was presenting at the board, I said, we love these values of yours, but let's have this additional one, leading returns for shareholders. But our employees rejected this because they say that if we do all of these other 5 things, this one is a given. It's going to happen.
It'll happen anyway, yeah.
Why do you have this thing? So we have changed the values. We have also changed the areas of growth, the growth areas. So as we are making now acquisitions, our acquisitions will be based largely on this new strategy and the new growth areas that we have identified as a company.
What kind of mask are you using?
What kind of a mask?
Everybody has their kind of mask, the cloth ones, the paper ones.
No, I'm using a cloth mask. Yeah. There's no real reason why I'm using. I'm just using
what you've got.
Yeah,
you hand sanitize and all of these things.
Yeah,
you guys go through the process.
I think it's going to be the same whether we've got COVID-19 or not. This thing now has just become so normal with me, and I think it's a good practice to do that.
And did anyone you know closely, anyone in the immediate family, get sick?
Yes. A number of my family members, extended family members, were sick, and we have lost one person in the family.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I think everybody knows at least one,
yes.
and that's too many.
Yes.
So, Mteto, how do you think it's going to look when we look back on this time? And this is always one of the most difficult questions because I'm a student of history.
Yes.
And history is much easier because it's always in hindsight. We can evaluate things, we can say, oh, well, it was a mistake in 2008 with the global financial crisis to do this or to do that. But in the time that you're in, you don't always know what the answers are. How do you think your children and the generations that are coming will judge all of us for the year 2020?
Wow. That's as you are rightly saying, it's a tough question.
Yeah.
I think they will judge us with the decisions that we either did not make or the decisions that we made. And because what we decide to do, our choices today, they will determine where we'll end up in the future. So basically that is what is going to be the key. It's going to be very, very concerning when we look back and say that we actually, as a country, we wasted the opportunity. This was a perfect opportunity for us to pivot, to change things. And if we don't make those changes, they will judge us and say, this was a bunch of people, I don't know what Fiki Lambalula said about...
bunch of losers.
Yeah, they will probably say something,
I hope not. Yeah.
Something along those lines. But we have an opportunity right now, as the country is looking at the economic recovery, to partner, to go and engage with government and bring labor in and influence those plans to reflect what needs to be done. But at the same time, we also need courageous leadership. At a country level, at a company level, we need to make calls, make decisions, and execute on those decisions.
Well, I'm very, very pleased that we have business leaders like you who are prepared to say things, to give us constructive feedback when we go wrong, and to help inspire the rest of us to get ahead of the curve and to make sure that we know what's going on, what technological opportunities there are, what business opportunities there are, and how we can do things for others. It's very good to see you. Thank you, Mteto.
Thank you.
Mteto Nyati is the Chief Executive for Ultron, and I thank you on his and the entire company's behalf for being part of this very, very exciting day. I do hope that you've not only found information and inspiration, but that you've also got some empowerment and entertainment out of today. And we hope that you have. Give us your feedback, please. We'd love to hear if you could complete the feedback survey on the app when we close it down. We would very, very much appreciate to hear your thoughts on what we could do more of, what you'd like to see in the next one, and we will put all of that into action, and we'll make sure that we get back to you too. So thank you very, very much for joining us today. Big thank you to everyone for participating. Today's program, just in case you don't know, will be available, because it's been recorded, it will be available in a day on ultron.com. So go along and check it out on the website. Thank you, Mteto, and thank you very much to everyone who's made today possible.
While life holds its breath, our streets silent, our businesses paused, while we watch from behind windows, waiting for the world to wake, we are still here, because you need us to be. We're there in the constant chatter of critical communications, connecting citizens to essential services so that while we're isolated, we're never alone. We're there in the rush of digitized data that helps health workers hand out comfort and care across the wires, keeping the patient relationship alive. We're there in the hum of enterprise and collaboration, in the steady pulse of our organizations who may have lost their centralization, but not their people or their purpose. We're keeping the heart of our smart cities beating and our call centers fired up. We're making sure we have the access and means to feed the ones we left at home, safe and protected every step of the way. We're keeping us entertained and alive and in touch. Locked down, sure, but never locked out. Socially distant, but closer together. Limited in movement, but not in choice. Because right now, what we do, what we all do, matters. What we have is worth protecting, and who we are is worth fighting for. When we wake, and we will wake, we will see the fruits of today's labors. Every call answered, every outsider brought in, every payment made easier and trip made safer, all the ideas innovated, help given, and midnight oil burned. These shape and build our new world. They define tomorrow, and they define us. Ultron. There when it matters.